All right, welcome back, everybody. It is the RP Show, episode number 1500, Canada's favorite daytime sports talk show, streaming live on YouTube and all major podcast platforms, and later in the week back on Game Plus Television. Thank you for your patience, and the same goes for you, Jamie Thomas, my good and longtime friend, Winnipeg Jets reporter. Can I say podcaster? You realize that's the cool thing now, JT. You're a podcaster.
Aren't you a podcaster as well, Rod? Like that's
I guess that's what the kids tell me.
Yeah,
that's what the
we are
kids tell
not
me.
journalists. Well, you're a journalist. I'm not a journalist. I remember a long time ago, Nelson Millman, my boss at Sportsnet, said, "Jamie, you're not a journalist. You're an entertainer. So just entertain people," which is fair.
Was
like
it?
for an
No.
anchor.
I thought
For
Nelson
news-
was
for
the
sports
coolest
anchor?
dude. Yeah.
Rod, Nelson Millman is one of my favorite bosses ever because never pulled punches. Always told you where you sat, what he wanted, what he expected from you. Never, like he told me one time to stop fiddling with my hands on the desk on the set because it's distracting. He goes, if you can't control yourself with a pen, throw the pen away. So like just a very blunt, to the point kind of guy, which I respected because there's not enough of that anymore where people will tell you what they're thinking as your boss. So I always appreciate Nelson and to this day, because you only get better when someone is clear with you on what you need to do or what you shouldn't be doing. If that makes sense. I sound like an old guy.
Dude,
you know what I mean?
We could go on for hours on all of this, but can you just tell me, please, what's Nelson doing now? I'd like to send him a note or something. He was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, I'll send you his contact information for sure. So, but I agree with you. He was probably my favorite boss. Not gonna lie, like I mean, anybody in this business or I'm sure anybody in this world would appreciate their boss to be honest with them at all times, especially if you're not doing something that they want you to do or not. Anyways, like you said, we could go on hours for about how this could be beneficial in all parts of the world. But I'll send you his contact information after I'm done.
That's pretty rare nowadays, but in the time that I was with Sportsnet, Nelson was exactly that. And so, speaking of honest, dude, Game 6 in Dallas. How are you with that? How's Jets fans with that? How's the Jets with what happened that night?
I think we'll start with me. It was hard to watch. Like I've talked to enough people that were at the game from the organization. Like that's as heartbreaking and as an emotional roller coaster as you're going to get. I had just, and I don't like when people inject themselves into people's tragedies and stuff like that. But I had just spoken with Brad Scheifele after Game 2 of the St. Louis series, and I've ran into Brad a lot over the years of working for this organization. He's everything that everybody said he is. He's gregarious. He's funny. He's personable. Just a joy to be around. And Sarah Orlesky, who I worked with, told a great story about how Brad is so optimistic. She actually literally told him she wanted him to record a friendly greeting that she could wake up to every day, because that's how optimistic he was. That's how great of a man he was. And I clearly I'm not Mark, and I didn't grow up with him as my dad, but just a great person. So for him to go through that day was extremely challenging, and for the rest of the organization. But Jets fans, Sarah and I did a pregame show that morning. I was extremely. I know they're great fans, but the generosity and all the kindness that they showed for Mark during that show. And then afterwards now too, you lose that way, and you lose in heartbreaking fashion. I think people realize there's more to our life than just sports. And Mark having to go through what he went through that day and the way the organization handled it, and him playing that night, Adam Lowry going to the penalty box afterwards, the hugs in the line afterwards, the words of kindness from the members of the Dallas Stars who they just went to war with for 6 games. That hug from Mason Marchment was something else, because as Mason had lost his dad too. I just think we saw everything that's great about hockey that night. So Jets fans, this was a special season. They got past the hump, Rod, of getting past the first round, and I think despite the fact that they were a Stanley Cup favorite, I think people appreciated this as just another step towards what this organization believes will one day be a Stanley Cup.
There are those that think they'll never win a Stanley Cup. I'm not one of those. I'm a
Mm,
never say
no.
never guy, and you're an unfailingly
Yeah.
positive guy too. And I
Yeah.
think that I could never see Mark Scheifele playing for another team. Now, it was Brett Favre-ish, and of course, he went on to play with the Jets and the
Yeah.
Vikings afterwards. So maybe it's too far down the road, But it just
Right.
that, and also in tragedy, and my other career dealing with that grief counseling
Yeah.
and that trauma counseling, you try to find a silver lining, and a lot of times it's very hard to find in tragedies. But do you think this brings the team together more than it's ever been? And I say that uncallously, obviously, but you just said another step.
Yeah.
You hope you can build on and find some sort of silver lining. I would think Brad would want that.
Yeah. It's well said there, Rob, because here's the thing. You go through the disappointment of going out in 5 games to Vegas, but that's just like a stepping stone. Last year, you finished 4th overall. You're the best defensive team in hockey, and you completely lose your way against the Colorado Avalanche. And each player said we got to be 5 to 10% better. And it sounds great when they say it in their postseason media availabilities, but you're like, what does that look like? Well, you finished 1st overall. Your Connor Hellebuck's going to win the Vezina, likely win the Hart Trophy. You're the best defensive team, so the William M. Jennings for another year. Mark Scheifele has a great year. Gabe Verlardi. I go down the list of all the players that had career years, and then you get past St. Louis. That was probably the worst matchup possible for the Jets in the first round, but also the best because of the grind and that the fact that they kept fighting back. Like you think of how they got destroyed in games 3 and 4 in St. Louis, but they come home and reverse the trend in game 5, get destroyed again in game 6 in St. Louis, come back, you're down 2-0 and 3-1, and we all know what happened. Probably the greatest ending in franchise history to a game. And they win in game 7. So all that emotion goes through. So you get over the hump. And Connor Hellebuck went through a lot of scrutiny in 7 games, probably the most he's ever gone through in his career, and comes out in the winning end. He lets in the 3rd goal, and then nothing gets by him through the 3rd period and through the double overtime. So he answers the bell there. They get past the first round. Maybe the biggest thing that set them back is all that emotion that they expelled in game 7. I'm talking the entire city, the organization. It wasn't all there for game 1 against Dallas. And you could tell how disappointed Scott Arniel was that they lost home ice because of how important it had been and how they had struggled on the road. But I think there's a lot of things, good places for us to go. And Rod, you're optimistic for a reason, because this is like where you can. Organizations don't drop off because they become closer because of a tragedy and how well Mark plays, but it's how everybody else played around him. Like they were resilient throughout that game. Of course, Scheifele scores that first goal of the game, the emotional roller coaster there, and just fighting their way through it. And of course, Mason Appleton had a great chance to win it in the 3rd period. But I just like the way that they responded to it. And then just afterwards, you could tell the word family gets thrown out a lot, but I believe that they are one because of what I saw on the ice and from what I've heard about, stuff in the dressing room. Not privy to that stuff, but just the things you hear about the organization. They're getting stronger. They're getting closer. And I think you have the quintessential leader in Adam Lowry. And that's where it all begins, right? And of course, from the top of the organization, we've talked about Mark Chipman many times. Kevin Shoveldayoff, all the great things he's done, the scouting and everything. It's a unique organization located in a unique part of the country. And you just have to be here and be a part of this organization to understand how special it is. And they just showed it through 13 playoff games. And hopefully there's the belief that there'll be, a bigger step taken next year.
A lot of Jets fans watching that they all want to know how this team's going to look coming back next year and what you think is ahead for the franchise.
Well, I think you've tied up some important pieces right before you. Alex Iafallo, Vladislav Nemestikov, Neil Pionk. I think Neil Pionk showed his value without Josh Morrissey, right? He played that 43 minutes plus in game 7. So you've got those parts, and I know what Jets fans are asking about. They're clearly interested in the future of Nikolai Ehlers. There's no doubt about that. Kevin Shoveldayoff said he had spoken with his agent. This is last week, so maybe over a week ago, and the indications are there that he had put out, there's going to be an offer on the table for him to become a Jet for life. What that looks like and how Nikolai Ehlers camp and himself, take that is another direction. But Kevin Shoveldayoff also mentioned we will be okay if this doesn't happen, right? You can't predict what all this is going to look like. So it's the belief that the fact that they're having conversations is exciting and important. But you also have to realize that there's money plays a large role in this. Terms going to play a large role in this. And even though the cap's going up, you still have other people. You got to sign Gabe Velarde. Dylan Sandberg's got to get a deal. Like and Kyle Connor's contract is up after this year, right? So that's not going to be cheap either. So I apologize, Jets fans. I wish I had like more clarity on what I believe Nikolai Ehlers' future is going to look like. But I'm like you, don't know what that's going to be. But what a player he is, and what a great example. I love how he whizzes over to Denmark for the World Hockey Championships, gets the Danes in the quarterfinals. They upset Canada. That's Nikolai Ehlers in a nutshell, man. He's electric. So hopefully this all works out for the best. But Dylan Sandberg's going to get a deal too. What a year he had! Took a big step this year. Top 4 defenseman for the first time, and played his best hockey. And he was injured there in November. Blocks a shot from Steven Stamkos, and you see his value without him in the lineup too. So, and then we just talked about Kyle Connor. Goal scorers like that are very hard to find. So Kyle Connor will be paid accordingly, whether it's this year or the following year. So. It's a very interesting offseason in the Manitoba capital, everybody. So just stay tuned for what that's going to look like.
David #1 writes in and he says, "Clear enough for me, JT. He's happy. We have
Thanks,
hard
David.
outs here. We have hard outs in like 90 seconds, right? I think maybe 2 minutes at the most. So I'll say this: the Panthers fans are mad at me because I'm saying Chevy for the Jim Gregory Award. Blaine Lake, Saskatchewan, man. He's Zito. They're all good at this point. Chevy."
Yeah, the last 3. You should, because and I'll tell you why. Like, just the things that Chevy works against every year is totally out there, and the fact that he finds the right people to buy into, like I've already said, a unique market, and that want to be here afterwards. You get Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck to sign long term, and the key components, Josh Morrissey, and of course Kyle Connor will likely sign here too. Like, they're just. The job he does year over year with the challenges that this organization has, he deserves that award as plainly as Scott Arniel deserves Coach of the Year this year. They did a tremendous job. Chevy does the right job every year and should be rewarded for it. Bill Zito has done a great job. Jim Nell's as good as it gets. Like you said, all 3 are worthy, but Kevin Cheveldayoff deserves the recognition this year for sure.
Good stuff. They actually tell me, again, this is our first live show with our new crew, so we got a couple more minutes than I thought. So let me you saw me talking about the CFL earlier. What did you enjoy with your time with TSN 1150 Hamilton? But I also know it was a tough time in your life because you were just leaving Sportsnet, blah blah blah. Was it not that enjoyable? What do you remember?
Okay, I'll tell you this. I appreciate TSN 1150 for this. Chris Cuthbert texted me one day, says, "Jamie, I listen to your show all the time when it's Ticats at noon," because, as you know, Rod, there's not many CFL-centric radio shows out there. And for the fact that Chris Cuthbert made note of that and listened to us every day was great. Hamilton, like this place, and I've said this too many times in the show, very unique market, but man, is it fun. Like, walking to Tim Hortons Field every day from the parking lot is so fun. The neighborhoods are all jacked up. It's the greatest place for that department, considering that the Argonauts are just down the road, but there is no support like there is in Hamilton. Obviously, it was fun talking about that. It was fun doing pre and post game shows. CFL fans are, as everybody that listens to the show, are as unique and fun as it gets. It's a great league. I don't need to pump its tires because everybody knows what it's about and how special it is. But it was fun to work at TSN 1150, and always grateful to them for helping me out after I got laid off from Sportsnet. So it's a great world out there. It's challenging, but there are always great people out there to help you along the way when you're having a tough time.
Well, and I felt like you weren't there very long because you landed in Winnipeg not long after that, right? And it's been ever since with
I think it was a year and a half at TS 1150. But man, doing the morning scrum with Louis B and Louis Butko, I had some Rod, Louis B. I had the best time doing morning radio, and now I look back, I wish I had a little bit longer because it's just so much fun. It sucks getting up early and going to bed early, but morning radio is a ton of fun. And I wish I had a longer time to do it because I felt like the show was just starting to get on the roll before the opportunity with the Winnipeg Jets came along.
Everything happens for a reason, buddy. You know that. I'm glad it's going so great for you. Hope to see you this summer, but thanks for jumping on today. This has been great.
Happy anniversary, 1,500 shows, pal. You deserve it.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you. Jamie Thomas joining us, Winnipeg Jets reporter. Oh, how long? How long? How long? How long? Oh my God. Okay, the timing's a little off, Jimmy. We're not saying goodbye
Can
just
we
yet.
still
This
talk?
one's
I
on.
wasn't sure.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I was supposed to go talking or anything like that. No. Oh my
No, we
gosh.
still got 3. It's hey, the
It's like
viewers can't
1,500
hear
show. I
what you're
could talk
talking.
forever. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's
50, I go forever
pretty
about it.
much. Yeah,
Yeah.
1,499 one way, starting a new
Yeah.
way today. So, well, I'll tell you what.
If it wasn't a
Let's go back
1,500 show,
to.
I would have just clicked off, buddy. I would just clicked off. It's
I
just like, no
know,
way.
I
I
know. Well,
got
you're a pro. You're a professional,
Yes.
and we're trying
Thank
to
you.
figure this all out as we move forward. And
Appreciate it.
not on Game Plus yet, but we will be later this week. But I want to go back to the Nelson Millman thing because just to tell you, he's a
Yeah.
motivator. It tells you how
Yes.
why Sportsnet was what it was. I went into his office one time and he stood up. This won't surprise you. He stood up from behind his desk. It was like a movie, and he's like, "Rod,
Mhm.
thank you for everything you do for Sportsnet." And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't do that much. I'm a stringer in
Yeah.
Saskatchewan. I did the World Juniors on radio. Not that much. Doesn't matter. You're a big part of what we do here. He makes you want to run through a damn wall, right?
Yeah. Yes. So because every time there's a criticism, he follows it up with something that you're doing well. But you also know when he is critical of your performance or was critical of my performance, I'll speak for myself, that you knew it was coming from the right place. It wasn't to tear you down or to make you feel worse about yourself. It was just that this is what, here's a great story. Because we did so many shows at Sportsnet Central, one time I just took and copied and pasted Brad Fay's lead into some story that was out there. I read it on air. Millman contacts me the next day via an email. He goes, "Brad Fay, you do not talk like Brad Fay, so please don't use Brad Fay's lead into a story." I'm like, how did he even know? Because he would have to have gone through each of the shows. But the fact that he watches all the shows or did watch all the shows was a big indication. And he was just so passionate about what we did. He put me in my place a lot because, as you know, in this business, sometimes our egos get the best of us and overtake things and put you in a place where you're not supposed to be. But he was quick to put you right back in it, and I've always appreciated for him that. And I became better at my job because, and I still talk with my hands too much, as you can see. But he was always like, he was quick to point that out too. So it's nice to know. As much as you don't want to hear constructive criticism, you have to take it when you get it and use it to your advantage because not enough people will tell you what you're doing wrong because they're just scared. I think they're scared to. I think bosses are scared to tell people what they're doing wrong. That is not the way to run things.
Or they'll just carve you behind your back and fire you.
Yes, that's what I mean. So if you're if you're a boss, you have to give people the opportunity to get better, to feel good about letting, if you've told somebody a million times to change something and they don't, yes, please let them go. But at the same time, if you give that person an opportunity to prove themselves and be better, that's what Nelson Millman did. And I will never forget it. Like, it was hard to hear sometimes, but it was integral to what, helped me out later on. And Rod, is this as our jobs go along, as we stay in this business, you look back into your early years and you're like, man, I should have listened. I should have taken that criticism and got better at it because that person that was telling.
And there we go. We should have listened. Great job, Jamie. We'll be back right after this.